Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
Good to be with you.
Jonathan, UK viewers might know something about you, but there's an international audience today. So I wonder if you might just say who you are and what your connection is to prisons and why you're particularly concerned about this subject.
My name's Jonathan Aitken, and I'm a prison chaplain at Pentonville Prison, which is something of an iconic prison in London and in Britain because it's one of the oldest prisons. It's over 178 years old. It's a very antiquated, run-down prison, partly because of its age. Its infrastructure is crumbling, but it's one of the big London prisons, and it houses at any one time about 1,300 prisoners, and they're in pretty cramped and overcrowded conditions, which is, I'm afraid, not abnormal.
Can you say something about, I mean, this is obviously about creation in confinement, and in your experience working with prisoners, what access do they have to creativity?
The answer is they have precious little access to any kind of creativity. The facilities for art, say, and creativity are woefully absent. There are spaces in the prison which you could use for that purpose, but the kind of thing we're talking about for healing arts, creative sculptures or paintings or artwork, it just ain't there at all. Prisons, apart from anything else, are notorious places for mental health problems. Mental health can stretch from people who are suicidal to people who are schizophrenic, right down to what is a very common problem, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and there's not much mental health treatment for these people. They're really left most of the time just to get on with it. So something like an opportunity to do artwork or an opportunity just to see murals, this would lift the morale and the mood of the prison. And for some individual prisoners who were encouraged to come and do artwork and taught artwork, I think it would be a game changer in their lives.
Right, and have you had discussions with the people that run the prison about the possibility of instituting programs like this? Would they be welcoming to it, and what can be done about that?
In Pentonville, we've got a very good governor and an imaginative management team, and I have discussed this project with them, and they are warmly welcoming. They would love to have murals on their ugly, empty walls. They absolutely see the point. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a budget to do it, which is a very big problem. I wonder if I might, at this point, bring in, to join this discussion, a former prisoner in Pentonville. He's become a rather friend of mine. His name is Dan Brown, and he's coming into our screen now.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Dan. Nice to meet you.
Please tell Ben Luke, who's interviewing us, why you were in Pentonville.
I became involved with Pentonville when I started taking drinking drugs to cope with my dad having a stroke. He nearly died in my arms. Rather than seek professional help, I chose obviously the quick, easy fix at the time, which I thought would work, which it didn't. Obviously, drinking drugs don't work. They just cover it over like a plaster. And I started committing crime, obviously stealing alcohol from shops. It then escalated to me pulling out knives to rob the shops, and obviously, rightly so, I got my ass slapped and put in Pentonville.
Of the last 10 years, how many of them have you spent in prison?
7. So I've spent 7 Christmases, 7 birthdays, which is been brutal, if I'm being honest with you.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. Is it, because we're talking about access to creativity inside, and I wonder if when you were inside, I'm sure you would have wanted to do things to keep you occupied and to let your imagination be expanded, I guess. Did you get offered those activities? Were you able to be creative inside?
If I'm being brutally honest, the regime for me was basically 1 hour a day out of your cell. So you're spending 23 hours in a cell no bigger than a toilet room with a bunk bed. And most of the time you've either got a cellmate, it's either taking drugs getting out of his face, you know. And as you can imagine, somebody that's trying to come off drugs, it's not the best environment, you know. I've been in cells where you've got no windows, so it's open to the cold weather, no heating, sometimes no even running water, you know. And when you ask to do stuff, they just brush it off, you know. I mean, there's not a lot of investment in Pentonville. I mean, it's crumbling. You've got cockroaches in your cell, you know, mice. That's just a normal, you know. Sometimes you even get leaking water from the roof because the pipes have burst, you know. And it's like even if you want to paint your cell, make it a bit more bearable, you know. It's just, it's not there, if I'm being honest with you. So most of the people there, you know, especially if you're going in there and you're vulnerable as well, it ends up exacerbating like mental health issues. You know, I've seen a lot of people that have cut themselves to pieces because they have no nourishing environment or anything nourishing to do. From my point of view, I think it would be very beneficial to have meaningful use of time, like with art, stuff like that, you know.
Prisoners are people, and they've got talents.
Well, there's a hell of a lot of untapped talent because a lot of people go in there broken, you know. So anything that would be able to, I don't know, make them feel useful to society again, and also not looked down as like excess baggage to be left.
Why incarcerate people? Why put people in prisons if there is no rehabilitation in the way that Dan's saying? If people are being put into prisons and then coming out and reoffending and going back in, what is the point of prisons?
Well, don't get me going on the vast issue of sentencing policy, or should we do things differently? It's worth saying that actually, despite all the gloom, all the negatives, there are a few positives. And Dan, frankly, is one of them. He's come out of prison, he's rebuilding his life, he's on a journey, but most people are in the glooms and despair, and there's nothing for them to do.
They say there's £40,000 per year funding for each prisoner to get put in prison behind a door for 23 hours a day. And if you look at it, value for money, it's not there, you know? I mean, it's just not.
What about the wall space in Pentonville? There is a lot of it, isn't it?
Yes, there is. There is a lot of wall space, and I believe a bit of art would make the environment more bearable.
Pentonville is a desert as far as art is concerned, but one or two prisons have art workshops. And from time to time, because I go around to prisons, people give me things. Now, here's a present I was given. Try and hold it up. These are a couple of bookends, and they were carved. They're rather good. I'm not doing justice to them. But they were carved by a prisoner in Brixton who, with great pride, gave them to me. And then here's a picture which I was presented with at Oakwood, a prison near Birmingham. That's done by, it's a prison art. And it's an example of what does go on. And the prisoners themselves, I was rather moved. They presented them to me as though they were handing over the crown jewels. They've achieved something, they've done it, long to give it to somebody. We have none of that in Pentonville.
You look at that picture and you can see the amount of effort and time that's gone into it, and the amount of time that it would have taken back in their cell to do the art, you know, and to preoccupy them and give them meaningful use of time would be quite considerable.
Jonathan, just to be clear, were those as a result of like sort of structured programs in which prisoners would make work with as Dan was saying, with somebody, with a teacher, with somebody who was actually helping them through the practicalities?
Yeah, all prisons are different, and they have slightly different regimes. We know it works, and the project we're talking about at Pentonville is if we could have enough funding to employ a couple of part-time instructors, art instructors, and some materials, and say, now this is how you do a mural. It would be enthusiastically supported by the prisoners. Prison officers are all ready for it, as the governor is all ready for it. We would just love to get this off the ground and make a big difference.
There are charities, there are organisations, people like Kirstler Arts, for instance, that work with prisoners and with the very aim of improving their lives through making art. Why is it that certain prisons seem not to have access to that help and others do.
But it's like all these charities, a small drop in the bucket compared to what is needed.
Is it just quite simply that there will not be government money that will go towards helping prisoners be creative?
Well, government money and prisons on the whole are two different worlds. Prison is very short of money, so it's really always had to be done by the private sector.
So effectively you're calling for sort of charitable donations which will allow you to put such a programme in place?
Absolutely. I mean, think imaginatively, a little money on brushes, paint, and an instructor to encourage people how to do it.
You think you've got over 1,000 prisoners, and most of the time they're locked in a cell for 23 hours a day. So if you have somebody there that's willing to train them, give them guidance, and make their environment better, it's going to have two things. It's going to help them with their mental health, and it's going to help them with their confidence. That's just the basics.
Dan's pointed out there's a lot of people together, all of whom are wanting to do more things to keep them occupied. That's a huge, there's huge potential in that to be put to use to decorate that space, to make that space even if it's not making artworks, as you say, murals, painting the walls, to make the space more amenable to human life is not that ambitious an aim, is it?
An absolutely obvious thing to do in a way, just it hasn't been done. I was a prisoner myself, serving 18 months for perjury 20 years ago. And one thing I learned, and I often tell people this, that coming out of prison is harder than going into prison. Sounds a rather odd thing to say, but it is true. And why? Because when you come out of prison, your confidence is at a very low ebb. Low self-esteem is a big problem in a prison, but a man who's done a mural or made bookends like the kind I showed you a few minutes ago, he's usually a man who's then at least got some self-esteem, says, well, I can paint.
I do paint and decorating on the outside, obviously, in the community, and my confidence through doing that in the community has gone through the roof, and the result of that is I've not went around the same circles I used to hang around with, and I've withdrew away from that, and now I'm flourishing.
One of the things that's clear from what you've just said, Dan, and Jonathan, I'm sure that this is something you've experienced many times, is that art has a transformative power. This is one of the things it does to us all.
Art is transforming, and people who are very low, it takes very little to transform them quite a bit.
I think one of the things that we haven't talked about is that art made by prisoners does, when it's exhibited, also has a very powerful effect. And that's a tremendously important thing because it gives the opportunity for viewers to encounter the thoughts, dreams, ideas of people who are in prisons and to profoundly humanise those people, because apart from anything else, so much of the language around prisoners is dehumanising, and it doesn't treat people that have problems, as we've established, with any level of dignity.
Very much so. I do make a point of trying to go to prisoners' art exhibitions, which there are one or two, certainly in London every year.
Jonathan and Dan, thank you so much for talking to us today. This has been a really fascinating conversation, so thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to say thank you as well. Thank you.
Thanks.